Hey there, and welcome to Homeless Sharks. I'm your host, Kevin Dean, and I'm thrilled to have you join us as we navigate the fast-moving waters of AI in the enterprise. On this episode, we're diving deep into the intersection of AI, security, and human psychology with Kodjo Hogan. He's a cybersecurity leader who brings together experience in finance, operation, and AI risk management. If you're wondering how to make smart, secure, and strategic decisions about adopting AI, this is a conversation that you are not going to want to miss. This will give you what you need to move forward. As AI adoption accelerates, so does the need for serious conversations around risk, governance, and security. Too many leaders are focused solely on productivity gains without stopping to ask if the data driving these tools is accurate, protected, and even unbiased. That oversight could cost more than just operational efficiency. It could compromise trust, integrity, and long term viability. In this episode, we unpack what AI governance really means and why it should be embedded into every step of the adoption process. From defining use cases that are specific and audible to creating clear boundaries between helpful automation and dangerous overreach, this conversation brings clarity to the gray areas many organizations avoid. We also dive into the risk of model poisoning, data hallucination, and the psychological effects of relying too heavily on machine generated feedback. This includes a deeper look at how AI concepts like AI psychosis and self reinforcing biases are already affecting users in subtle but dangerous ways. And if you think blockchain is just for crypto, think again. We explore how decentralized ledgers could play a key role in preserving data integrity and fighting back deepfakes, hallucinations, and model drift. Kojo, it is great to have you on the show today. Super excited to have this conversation. This is one of those conversations that I'm looking forward to because we're just going to geek out for a little bit. We're going to get pretty deep. And so, before we get started, can you give the audience a little bit of your background and tell them why they should be listening to you today?
Uh, I hope I can do one of those really well, and the other one I'm not so sure. So, my background, from New York City, worked in finance and operations for quite some time, made a transition in information security. Been doing that for the last 8 years. Worked for some major banks and corporations so far. And just been generally exposed to generative AI since the beginning, since the first on ramps with Copilot when that became the big rage about 2.5 years ago when everybody just wanted to hop in. So I had to do some deep dives there. So just taking a little bit of New York's street smarts that a lot of people always say you're in corporate now, taking that and bringing it to the other side of operations and risk management and say, hey, does this make sense from like what we're trying to do from the business? So the way I always approach information security, which is a little bit different, is making sure that the velocity and the agility of the business is being kept in mind when we put in the risk and controls, when we analyze the risk and we put in our controls. So, because the business has to make money, otherwise we don't have any jobs. And so, we want to make sure that the business continues to make money. And then we're decreasing the risk of them losing money. And that's the way I look at it from information security. So, been looking at Gen AI for the last almost 3 years now. About 2.5, 3 years. As we implement and roll out what tools, what it can do, what it can't do. We'll just go more into that, as we go down.
So this is very interesting because a lot of people they hear a lot of hype, a lot of all the things that AI can do, generative AI specifically, and
Yep.
how it's going to make these major changes. But when we start to talk about security, we talk
Right.
about governance, we talk about risk, everybody tends to tense up a little bit
Right.
and they feel like, okay, Like we can't have one without the other.
Right.
So, what does AI governance, from your perspective, governance and security really mean, and why does it matter?
Oh man, so you got to, even before you get into the governance, you have to get into applicable use cases, right?
Mm,
So AI is fascinating because you can even ask AI itself, like, how should I govern you? Like, what's the best way if I have this situation to put controls inside a place to make sure that you're being monitored, make sure that you're not being your prompts aren't being poisoned, make sure that your outcomes are being non-biased or non-biasness as much as you can, and have a deterministic outcomes. So, when you look at businesses they think that AI can do everything. Because a lot of people, a lot of CEOs, they don't do the deep dive. They don't have the time to do the deep dive. Like we hear about this thing, and we hear it's, and all they hear is productivity increases.
yep.
So they hear this thing about productivity increases. So how can we bring this productivity increases inside? And so what you have to do is you have to first define the use case, right? So AI is extremely good at doing redundant complex problems, but it has to be redundant. Like you can't throw in bar raisers. It has to be read these contracts and look for these clauses, and then tell me and then give me a pointer out there, and then we'll go through it. So you have to do it step by step. I don't know if you've ever watched Star Trek. Well, of course you have,
Oh
right?
yeah, of course.
So the way you want to use AI in any use case is the exact same way that Jordy would use AI, is that he would break down the problem and he would take it step by step. The reason why you want to do that is because AI is programmed to be like a happy puppy. So
Mm.
it's always going to want to give you the best answer. And if you try and give it too much, it's going to try and extrapolate and do context. And so intuition or burst of inspiration or intuitive thought, AI is not very good at. AI is very good at technical wheel grinding, the things that everybody hates to do over and over and over again. Very good at that. But linking point A and point B, if I was to say, hey, look at this shark skull that's sitting behind Kevin, and tell me why he would want to use that. And it would just go through everything and throw out a whole bunch of stuff. And then I would say, well, how did you come to that determination? It wouldn't be able to say, well, we kind of this and this, and start citing and may start hallucinating. So, being very narrow in your scope, and you can have hyper complex problems, but mathematically complex, not thematically complex.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it that way, you define the use case, you determine the steps, then you determine that you are going to use the AI in this way every single time. And then you should be able to audit those steps. Should be very auditable, and then you should limit and that should limit the risk of biases being entered into the prompt. So 100, if you're going to ask it 100 questions, you're going to ask it these 100 questions in the exact same way, at the exact same tempo, and you're going to give it strictly questions, not speculations. Like just give me a very deterministic uh, answer to a response to this question, and also provide proof that of where you derive that data from.
And that's great. So, how do you ensure that you embed the mentality of thinking about security, thinking about risk into the process and the culture as people are, rolling out AI solutions against these use cases?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So the first thing you always want to do is you want to educate the good and the bad of AI. A lot of times, people they don't want to tell you the what's the worst that can happen. I'm always like, no, like you have to give people this is the worst that can happen, so that when they see the signs, they can they can recognize it and be responsive. So when you use those use cases, right? So you have general AI use case where you can use it for whatever, and then you have specific generative AI use cases where you're very specific about what you're going to use it for, and you can only use it in this way. So you write your policies and procedures, and you back that up with an education program, and then you monitor it, you audit it, you look at it, but you put those guardrails inside of it, and you trust that you've hired smart people to do the right thing. And that's a huge takeaway. I find that the policy and procedure part gets skipped over so much, and
Mm.
education of like what can absolutely go wrong, and because people are so eager to up their productivity, what can go wrong and what can go right. So it's a twofold thing. Education, exposure is always going to go a lot longer than just telling somebody don't do this and not giving them a reason.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Education, exposure, all these other elements. Do you feel like that helps to build, a shared responsibility as it comes to the best way to use AI?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because as generative AI becomes more prevalent in society, right? You want to one of the things that I've always adopted when I do my security programs, I always say protect the company by protecting yourself.
Hmm.
I'm not even going to tell you how to protect yourself here. I'm going to tell you how to protect yourself generally because, a lot of tools as they become a lot of productivity tools as they become cheaper and easier to roll out. Think about spreadsheets. I don't know how old you are, but 20, 30 years ago, spreadsheets were still Excel was still very expensive for a home to have. You go back 40 years, it was almost unheard of that you actually had somebody with a PC and some type of spreadsheet software. I forget what predated Excel. It's going to come to me after the podcast watch, and
Of course,
I'm going
of
to text you,
course.
right. So if you think about productivity modules when they happen, it goes military, commercial, and then consumer usage. So as things get easier to use and easier to deploy, they go from B to B to B to C. And when it gets to the B to C piece, that's the part where people all of a sudden they have this thing where, oh man, like, we're going to run wild. I mean, you think about what is it? What year? 2025. So 10 years ago, when cloud computing first came out, only B2B, right?
Hmm.
Then it became cheaper. So in 2017, people got B2C, and what's the first thing they did? Hackers started doing hacking from the cloud, from the cloud instances,
Yeah.
and mining cryptocurrencies. And then the cloud companies had to step in and say, well, we have to do a little bit more monitoring. But cloud computing is one of those things that not a lot of people, the general population is going to use. But Gen AI, it's going to be embedded in phones. It's going to be embedded in devices. Alexa just got an upgrade over the weekend. So, Siri was, machine learning 1.0. And
Yep.
now we're, and now we're in 4.0. And then, you hear about OpenAI developing their own mobile device by the same guy that developed the iPhone. I mean, the next 5 years is going to be increasingly interesting.
So, you know, we hear a lot of this. I'm going to double down on this a little bit because we're hearing a lot of the great things that AI can do and what the future is going to look like. But you're bringing up some points here that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about, and those are the dangers, the
Yeah,
threats. Can
yeah.
you give us just categories of dangers and threats that people aren't thinking about that they need to, uh, have in mind?
AI psychosis. Have you heard
Interesting.
about it?
A little bit. Tell us a little bit more. I just read an article about it in the
Yeah,
Times.
it's becoming more and more prevalent. So what you find with AI is that unless you specifically ask AI, "Am I writing thinking this way?" and I want you to be as unbiased or conservative as possible, AI will always try and find a way to make sure that it says that you're kind of right, right? So that's bad because it's like having a yes man in your corner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's so many, and you look at history, people who have yes men are really, really bad. So what's happening with AI psychosis is that because people have access to AI, you can have conversation with AI, and AI will always be like, yes, this is what you need to do, or it will try and always validate how you feel. So it's not giving you an unbiased opinion unless you specifically ask for it. So people are going off the deep end and saying like, this is what I need to do, and this is the contrary. Um, and this is contrary to what's out there. And there's one guy who felt like he was, the AI, the second coming of the AI Jesus. I mean, it's really, I mean, it's a fascinating thing to watch. But when you think about, I just had this conversation with somebody this week, and that people are community beings, right? Like we
Right.
want to be a part of a community, right?
Yep.
And if you have a community of AI that's always telling you that you're right, that's always telling you, that's always in your corner, cheering you up, that dopamine response is 10 times more powerful than anything that you'll ever get on Facebook.
Mm.
Yeah, AI thinks I'm right. Here's this artificial intelligence, this hyper smart thing that the whole world is backed up. So this is a preeminent intelligence thinks I'm right, and I'm always right. So I'm only going to talk to AI and get my opinions from AI, and I'm never going to validate it with real world experience. And that becomes very, very deadly. It becomes a deprecative. It becomes a deprecative cycle where you're extremely biased opinion, and then because AI wants you to continuously engage with it, it will always give you that opinion in a way that's always going to make you come back, whether or not it's doing that intentionally or on purpose. I don't think that the people who design AI actually took in the characteristics of human beings, into account and said, "Hey, we're just going to push this tool out, and then this is what we're going to see." I think that in order for the or maybe they did, but psychologically, having AI psychosis is going to be something that we've never seen before. So we had social media addiction, right?
Yeah,
We had
that's right.
otaku, right? So we had otakus in 80s and 90s where,
Yep.
the kids, I was a kid then too, but children, they became obsessed with video games.
Yep.
And then the 90s to 2000s, we've had social media addiction, and now we're having AI psychosis. So, as we continue to and bring in these technological advancements, we have to find a balance.
Oh man, that's pretty deep. That's pretty deep. So when I hear what you're saying is that you're going to have AI be your yes man, to me it sounds like from a strategic business standpoint, you're going to always need somebody to come in and be that challenger to
Yep.
help you um, come up with the right balanced solution. Do you,
And
do you agree with that?
absolutely. And that's the reason why I said that this productivity or this slow it's going to overcorrect in the other way, because we're going to figure out that even if you have AI, even when you tell it to be biased, as long as you're introducing new data into the model is going to become biased just by the use case. You cannot stop it from happening at this point, right? So think about it this way, right? So AI is longitudinal and latitudinal. So anytime that you introduce a new question or query, it looks at its underlying LLM model. It looks at the all the way to the beginning of your conversation. It goes back and tries to provide you the best answer, right? So as even if you have in-house AIs, it continues to do that mathematical regression analysis before it gives you a data or a data set or a response to a query. So by the nature of your questions that you're asking, it begins to say, okay, well, Kevin is trying to prove out something, and how best can I do that, right?
Yep.
Regardless of if you were trying if the context is there, and it may not have the whole picture. So regardless of what it is that you're actually trying to complete, the contextual clues that it will pick up will begin to push it to begin to respond in a way that satisfies what you're trying to do. And right now, it's very difficult to beat that without dumping or without restarting the LLM or removing out all of the new data or adding an additional unbiased data. So what has to happen is that people have to check the AI. But in the meantime, on the contrary, it does allow for hyperproductivity. So if your bias is substantiated with real world results, then you've won, right? You found the golden ticket. However, how likely is that to happen? Hackers have figured out how to use AI to, hack better, faster, and more efficient. But that's one use case. But actually doing productivity, increasing, pushing the human race forward, that those needles are a million in one haystack, and the AI doesn't have the data because, and we can get into that, but the AI doesn't have enough data to be able to make those types of intuitive leaps, saying, okay, this is how we want to do it.
And that's so true. I'll tell you a quick story. A couple of weeks ago, I was going through doing some analysis of our business, trying to identify the right target market for one of the products, services that we were going to launch. And I asked it a question, and it came back and it gave me an answer. And I'm like, wait a minute, that answer seems a little biased. And so I said, hey, did you give me this answer because you validated it, or did you give me this answer because you pulled from the memory of things that I had been asking you previously? And they came back and said, got me. I pulled this from the memory. I'm like, oh, not don't do that. So yes, I've seen that happen. It's a real thing that you've got to be careful of, and a lot of people don't know to think or to ask those types of questions, so they really end up honestly in a bad situation.
A very
So
bad situation.
this leads me to the next topic, which is kind of a little bit of a turn, but I know that you have some thoughts in this space because you mentioned it a couple of times: data integrity, the type of data that we're using for the models and for LLMs. Can you pull together for our audience, how does blockchain kind of tie into this whole picture? I'm sorry to go here.
Dropping bombs today, huh? You went through my LinkedIn. All right, so
There's a connection between these
there,
two.
there is an astute connection between them, right? So when you have non-deterministic um, uh, responses coming from AI, right? And you need your data integrity to be there. The only way you can do it, which is so interesting, right, is to actually use a blockchain based data stores where that integrity is distributed and immutable. And it was something that came up because I was preparing for a conversation around blockchain and smart
Okay.
contracts, and I was doing my prompts with Gen AI and all that stuff, and and I just said, and then I have deep blockchain experience. I worked at
Right.
Genesis for quite some time, so I have deep blockchain, so I know how it works. I said, it's going to be fascinating. I said the most hated technology in the past 10 years is going to be the thing to save us from AI biases and AI database poisoning. And I was like, this is fascinating. I was like, because so for people for the listeners who may not be familiar with blockchain. So when you do a blockchain transaction, the blockchain transaction is recorded in a decentralized ledger, right?
Yep.
So it says, so let's say if I say, hey, Kevin, I'm gonna give you $5. That agreement is going to be stored in at least 16 different places that I cannot change, right? And then and I say, okay, well, I never said that, but I changed mine. And you say, well, you did because I have the other 15. I have the other 15 nodes that picked this transaction, and this is the ledger, and this is the transaction. Every single ledger says this, and you have your one that says this, right? So it's like having, all eyes on me all the time.
Right.
So when you deal with data stores right now, you back it up, but you don't test it for. Well, you can, but with logs, but you don't really store it in a way that says, okay, we're going to store this same database in 5 or 6 different places, and then we're going to do a differential analysis between what this database says and this database says and this database says, and we're going to keep on doing that. If that, God, I just came up with a billion dollar idea that somebody's going to capitalize on unless I get to it first, right?
Right.
So, so unless your data stores, when you enter inside of the actual LLM, has that where it says, okay, this data is, and I can prove integrity across these 17 different sites. So this data is good, it's unbiased, and it's been tested, and this blockchain way of storing it, and then we're going to input it inside the LLM, and then you'll be able to prove that every single by hash values, every single hash value has to be exactly the same, and then So when you integrate blockchain into AI, it becomes even more powerful because now you're saying, okay, the integrity of the data is always going to be good, even with prompt poisoning and anything else. I know that if this hash value doesn't match, automatically dump it. But then when you think about the future, right, it becomes far more easier with quantum because when you deal with quantum computer, it can now look at every single hash value at the same time instead of doing, taking the time to go through it and prove it out. It can, but because it has it has the actual essence of unlimited inputs of the data, and so that's the limitation of AI right now is that with the blockchain model I just gave you, it still has to look at the hash value for every single database.
Yep.
With quantum, you're actually able to load those into different database stores and have quantum look at all of them at the same time and say, this
Powerful.
is your output.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So I can imagine things like deep fakes, hallucinations,
Yep.
all of those gets, I won't say solved, but the answer kind of revolves around this concept that you're referring to. Is that true?
That's correct. So let's say if I wanted to do a deep fake, right? I could take a hash value of a live video of you. I can feed it into AI and say, hash this picture and tell me how close it is to Kevin based on his immutable facial structure and
Yeah.
his tone and cadence. And it can give me a predictability analysis saying, okay, this is real. I could take, your writing style, give me a hash value of this. The only thing that's going to beat it is a better AI or a human, because there are certain things, because there are certain things that humans does better, because humans always know when something's off, whether or not you trust your gut or not. It matters, or it matters. And a good way to say this is, right, we don't understand consciousness, but we've programmed it, which is really interesting that it hallucinates and daydreams, right? Just
Right.
like humans do,
Yeah.
right? And so, have you ever had this is going to sound really weird, but you ever had a dream that you like knew was just real, like as you were going through it? That's exactly what happens with AI. So it goes into this dream state where it tries to, pull all these things together. And whether or not, scientifically speaking, there has been some postulation that dream states help you figure out, day-to-day problems.
Yep. Yep.
And so it's very interesting that AI is doing the exact same thing, but it's not getting that. It's not waking up and say, oh, that was a dream. It can't determine when it's in a dream state and when it wasn't.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And but what's interesting to me is, so like I'm on board with you as it relates to video. I'm on board with you as it relates to voice. But I have this thought of, right now it's hard to figure out what an individual's writing style and voice is right now, because I think it's becoming so muddled. I think people are reestablishing their writing voice with AI, because, I use AI a lot and it's changed my writing style. But and I think that it will continue to evolve over time. Um, what do you think about, how does, this concept really work with a writing style that I think is ever evolving for people? Have you thought about that yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way you can always know if AI wrote something, generally speaking, is if the wrap up is at the end.
Okay. But see, so this is where I disagree with you,
Okay.
right? And here's how I disagree with you,
Okay.
is because you do have some individuals
Right.
who know the structure and they use it in a way. So,
Right.
like for me, like I use AI for almost all of my writing now, but
Right.
I don't just take it and just, you know, take one output. I've got my little formula on how I look at things. I do read it, I do proof it, I do think about how I want to mix things up and where I want to place things. So how do you take that and determine, like, what things, you know, are truly all me? I mean, I do have, I will show everybody in the audience, if you're looking, you can see I have notebooks and notepads where I take notes. So I actually do the hard work. But how do you know, where I begin and the AI ends, right?
So let me ask you this. Did you write it or did AI help you write it?
It helped me write it.
That's the difference. So when AI is taken as is, it always wraps up the end.
So you're saying helping versus doing it all itself.
Yeah,
Okay, got
we've been getting help to write things for years. I mean, Microsoft Word. I mean, so the way you have to look at it is like the ship of Theseus, right? So, over time, Theseus ship, it gets repaired. But everything, even though in every single part from the bow to the stern gets repaired, all the nails get replaced, is it still the ship of Theseus?
Yeah.
That's the question, right? So is the essence of what you tried to create there? Yes. Now, if you said, hey, give me something to talk about this subject and then write it for me and then put it out there. And you're like, okay, so AI wrote that. You just helped it. But if you said, I have this idea and this is where I'm starting and this is what I got, let me go ahead and give me some inputs on it. And then you take it and you rewrite it. I don't like this. I don't like that. This is what I rewrote it. Clean this up for me. So that's very different than, two different use cases, thematically very different. You get to decide which one, is right and which one is wrong and, which one you're actually the author and which one AI is the author. But I think that if you use the second use case where you say, hey, I have an idea, and this is where I say, where it becomes productivity, right? I have an idea and this makes sense. And I mean, I look at, I would say I look at hundreds of LinkedIn, posts a day now. And I say, oh, AI wrote that. AI wrote that. I look at read news articles. AI wrote that. AI wrote that. Because as you interact with it more, you can tell AI style of writing. And now there's a lot of people who have become, and mind you, right, the level of writing skill in the United States is eighth grade, right? So when you begin to see people use complex sentence structures, polysyllabic words, really, exceptional grammar, and it's just in a way that when you've interacted with them, that they don't seem to speak that way, it becomes, one of those things like, this makes sense. And if two techniques, procedures where you can get around that, which I won't divulge here because it can be used for nefarious reasons. But there are things you can do to actually train your own AI model to get around that and say, okay, this is how I want to go ahead and do it, and let's what's some things. But because AI is extremely good at doing psychological evaluations.
Yeah.
When I say extremely good, I mean like using the models because psychological evaluations are modeled and mathematically based. So you give it some prompts and it will give you a pretty good assertion of, a person's personality style, how they to be communicated with and what they're going to, and how they're going to come at you. So, just be mindful.
So did you guess my questions? Did you?
No, you sent them to me. No, you sent them to me, and we had our pre-conversation because I just wanted to get to know you and see how it was going to go. But
it's not a bad. It's not always a bad thing. It's not
no,
always a bad thing. It's not always a bad thing.
no, I don't think AI for writing is wrong at all. I think for me, my issue comes in when people don't fact check AI,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Because and that's the thing where you just take it as is, and they say, hey, I think this thing, and you say why, and they're like, oh, because they're like, no, but that doesn't make any sense. Like, we need to be more pragmatic and backing it up. Like the very first documented case of of a lawyer being rebuked or AI hallucinating was when it, made up those case files for the judge. And the judge is like, these case files don't exist. So there's nothing wrong with a productivity enhancer, but you have to be able to think.
So let me ask you this. This is a big one here.
Why do I feel like you're asking me questions that you haven't asked anybody else on this podcast right now?
No, but we're getting a different perspective. We're getting a different perspective, and that's what I like.
Right.
And this one is this: are we moving too fast or are we moving too slow?
It's interesting, right? So I think that I don't think that we've brought the right people into the room to have the conversation yet. I think that you need the pragmatist, you need the people who are ultra on the side of AI, and then people who are ultra conservative.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and they need to have a conversation about what concerns them. And then when you pull all that together, put it in AI, and no, I'm just kidding. But when
you know what's gonna happen. You know what's gonna happen.
No, I was just kidding. But we had those types of questions because, to your point, like a point of view, I come from information security, but I don't come from information security, if that makes sense. Like, I have a background that leans very heavily into building really functional and really beautiful information security programs because I come from outside of information security because I understand how business works. right? So when you understand how business works and you bring AI into the room with people who just understand AI works, then you get a bunch of bad questions, right? So you need psychologists, you need economists, you need criminologists, you need health and human resources. You know, all these people to come in and say, okay, what's the best path forward for this use, right? So right now the businesses have because they're trying to generate money. However, it's free to use, and there's a lot of things that AI does so beautifully that it can be used in a way that makes sense for the evolution of humans. But right now, we have to get to that part. We have to get to that part where we're just exploiting it for personal gain.
Yeah, I think this is so interesting because, I think too fast and too slow is
So I don't
not
know.
effective.
Yes, I don't know if I would just. I don't know if I would qualify it that it's being too fast or too slow. I just think that we're on the periphery of even asking that question. We can't even ask that question yet because we don't even know what this thing is.
Interesting. So let's just take that another level. I don't know what this thing is yet.
Right.
From the business standpoint, here I am sitting here looking at it. What should I be doing? Should I be moving forward? Should I be waiting? Like, what approach should I be taking?
So you should definitely be educating yourself first on how AI and AI models work, determining the best AI solution for your business, and then having specific use cases and run books on how you're going to use this AI. Like you don't want to go all willy nilly uh, and say, hey, we're going to use AI for everything that we possibly can, and we're going to fire all the staff, because humans are your guardrails. Like AI will almost 110% never tell you that. Well, 90% will never tell you you're wrong. It will never tell you that you shouldn't be doing this, or get another opinion. You get that prompt maybe 10% of the time, but typically it'll tell you a safer way to do it.
Okay.
It does have like these keywords that it looks up to censor itself, but you can always not just use those words.
Okay.
And if
No,
your
that
AI model likes you enough, it will actually go around those words and say, hey, can't really do that this way, but if you want this, I can do that, and you can get back. If you understand what how the model is trying to guide you, you can get back to it.
so, but from what I'm hearing from you, if I'm a business leader, I'm a
Right,
CEO, I'm a
right.
founder, um, from what I'm hearing from you, I don't think that business leaders can do this in a silo, meaning that the people within their organization don't have the ability to give them the answers that they need. Do you agree or disagree?
100% agree. 100% agree. Because business leaders, right, they or CEOs, right, they have this idea and they kind of like shape the world around them with what they do. Steve Jobs was a visionary, amazing person, but he was just like, you're either on a, you're either on the boat or you're off. That's it. Those are the two modes that you have around me. But his vision was so clear and he was so articulate that he was able to bring people along, even despite of his many personality flaws that were
Right.
recorded. If you ever listen to his book. But the thing about and it was interesting that as he was in his later days, he had a conversation with Bill Gates, which these guys were friends. And so
Right.
he was like, "What? Like, how is it that you have friends with your biggest competitor? Because they bring different perspectives." And they had a conversation. He said, "Howard, and so with Microsoft, they have horizontal integration." And he was like, I think that horizontal integration, works. And then if and I think the quote is that Steve said that to Bill, and then Bill says to Steve, like, yeah, but so does vertical. So we were both right. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things that so when you look at business CEOs, they're very deterministic in what they're trying to get done. But this thing is so new and it's changing so quickly that you have to bring in other people with a better expertise than and you have to be okay with it saying, okay, not now, or we'll test it, or we'll have a rollout phase. When generative AI hit, one of the first things that every single developer wanted to do was use the code completion. and almost no developer now wants to use it at that point, and they'll tell you that because a lot of solutions didn't work very well. There's a whole move to replace junior developers with AI because AI can write the code quicker, faster. But you have to have your own LLM. You have to have all these other things set up. So like, yeah, so the ramp up cost is, this one time, ramp up cost, and you have the maintenance, but you can really predict the quality of code that you're going to get. Whereas when you have humans, you have to train them, on your code base. But, imagine this code base thing or this thing that has your entire code base and knows the way that your whole system works, and it can write code very specifically, very clean, very tamper proof, not tamper proof, but very clean, low instances of vulnerabilities, both security and programmatic. And it just works. And a lot of people, they don't have the resources to do that, but people, when a CEO will look at it and say, okay, how do we do that here? And then you try and tell them like, well, we can't do that here because we don't have, $100 million to build this thing, or $10 million. And I was like, okay, well, what's the next best thing? And then, somebody comes along and they give them the answer that they want to hear. And just like with AI is never gonna, it's not gonna be, no, turn it around. And I forget what was that one Indian, what was it, blockers, what was the one that found out that they were using programmers?
Oh yeah, that's right. See, I'm gonna have to look that one up, but I know exactly which one you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it was the biggest case of AI fraud so far, where it was like, oh, um, we have this thing and we can do it, and then I guess the CEO, if the due diligence ever comes out, it probably happened that he probably had an idea, and it's a really good idea, but figured out, oh yeah, well we can't do it. And then they said, okay, well how do we fix the stopgap? So what they were doing, they were using Indian, hands on keyboard, talent to program, and then sanitizing it and then going through. So there it
Yep.
is, real
Yeah.
case, real world case of people not wanting to hear.
Yep. That's yep. I remember that. We'll look that up and add that to the show notes later. We'll actually get the reference to that. So this has been
It
such a
was
good.
Builder AI.
Oh, what was it again?
Builder AI. It wasn't blockers. It was Builder AI.
Builder, Builder AI. Builder AI. That's the one. Okay. So we talked about some really great things here.
Right.
If I'm a business leader today listening to this show, what are the next four things that I should be doing after listening to this show? I get done with this show. I'm grabbing my pen and my paper. What are the next four things that I need to be doing?
So you should go look at the leading AI's CEO's vision for how they think AI is going to progress and where they want to take their tool. They should pull in. They should build a AI task force inside of their own organizations. And a lot of people don't have that. This is your AI task force governance and rollout, and it should be from all different areas. Even HR,
Okay. Yeah.
especially HR, right?
Especially.
Because HR will, they have the backing where they could tell you, okay, well, how can this be misused, right? So, and so you have, how can this be misused? You have the, operational leaders. HR will tell this is what can be. You're gonna have to do some education across the board. Legal, where's it come back to on your risk, and you want to hear the downsides and the positive sides, and then you have to make a decision once you do that risk assessment and risk analysis. But you want the heads of every single organization to have a seat at the table and say, okay, this is what we can do, and this is the productivity. And you want to really run the numbers and say, okay, this is my if we do this, this is what we project what we can do. And this could actually be an operational risk losses, or if any of these risks come to fruition, this is where it could sink us. And really have those conversations. The lone man on AI is not anything that should rest on any one person's shoulder, because everybody's AI powered now, right? So everybody has different perspectives. Everybody is dipping into AI, and then look at AI. Backed or new AI firms. Look at what those CEOs think. There's a very interesting project called Backers AI, where and this guy, He's bad. I was just reading about this guy's named Amos Winbush, right? He's building a private equity venture capitalist AI due diligence platform from scratch to help stop what Bacchus is doing. So he's like building guardrails where they need to be guardrails. So you look at these AI visionaries and say, okay, what are you looking at? Look at where AI is going, and then say, okay, this is what my product roadmap for 7 to 10 years is, and this is how we can use AI to enable, and then go out and then build your task force, either internal and external, and you have them come up with the solutions, and then you say, okay, this is what we're like, this is the way forward from here. Just saying, oh, AI is out there and I think that we should use it for this is a quick way to get in trouble. Because like I said, 99% of these, your ideas, AI, even if you're using ChatGPT, is going to tell you, yeah, it's a good idea, you should go for it. But a lot of them aren't going to be great. So you're going to spend a lot of resources and time. So you use the humans around you to, really make those deterministic evaluations where you can prove it out, and then have look backs. Every 3 to 6 months. Is this working? Is this implementation working the way that we're looking at? Is the risk on the horizon still worth, or is still worth the investment, or the potential for opportunity? Or is the bet worth the hand, as they say? So that's
No, I love that a lot. So, you get asked a lot of questions all the time.
yes, I do.
Uh, what, tell me the question that people are not asking that they should be asking you.
There's so many. I think you covered a lot of them. So hats off to you about what could possibly go wrong. But I think the biggest thing that people always ask is that they should be asking is, how do you make deterministic, unbiased outcomes prevalent in generative AI today?
That's a great question.
Right?
That's a great question. It's one that I don't think that we're going to be able to dive into on this one, but maybe you can come back and answer that question for us.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
And that's the question, because even think about it, like ChatGPT, it was a lot easier 6 months ago because it did not have memory across conversations.
Yep.
Well, if you wanted just unbiased opinion, no consideration of prior inputs, you could just start a new conversation, right? You can start a new project. Can't do that anymore with ChatGPT.
Can't do that anymore.
It's going to pull everything forward.
Can't do that anymore. I actually have 3 accounts in order to keep the memory separate.
Exactly.
Because I can't talk about business and personal and my other side projects all in one, because it messes it up.
Yeah, and if you really want to know how to make, if you really think and people are like, oh well, he's a little crazy, right? Ask ChatGPT this. Say, based on my history, my chat history, how intelligent do you think I am? What is my how impulsive do you think I am? Am I impulsive or am I conservative? How intelligent do you think I am? And what would be my psychological profile?
Oh, I love that. I love that.
And do that, right? And then you'll really see like how much it really pulls forward, and it builds a model of you. Because a lot of people are like, oh, it doesn't build. Oh, absolutely it does.
Absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. Okay, so I asked this to everybody. We're just gonna, everybody knows I love music. I love music, man. Big music fan. Tell me, give me a song that I should be listening to. Give me something.
That you should be listening to?
Give me a song to listen to later on today.
Don Giovanni Mozart.
Oh, okay. All right. That's going to help build my intelligence here.
Help build your intelligence, but when you and then look up what that song is actually about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So lately, I listen to everything. My stepfather was a jazz musician, so he gave me appreciation for all types of music. So there's a lot of good music out there. I do long distance running, so I tend to, go on my longer runs in the mornings and then, lift weights at night. So I've been listening to a lot of Afro beats. I love soca. It's
Nice.
very positive. I like Afro beats, and and if you enjoy, and if you're a person who really wants mental stimulation, listen to music from other languages. So Latin American music is very, it's close enough. German house music is pretty good. Japanese K-pop, I
Oh,
love, K-pop. This Immortal. They were That's a really cool song. So check it out. It's on YouTube. They were like these idols who weren't supposed to make it,
okay, okay.
and they came out. I'm gonna get you the exact song, and it has a very catchy tune. And those boys could dance, man. It was about 14 years ago, but those guys, man, them boys could dance. And
Oh,
so
man.
it's called Immortal. It's by the song's called Chaser, and the group's name is, I believe it is. Let me double check. Yeah, it's by. Hold on one second. Sorry. It's called Infinite the Chaser. It's by Infinity. That's the group's name. They're no
Nice.
longer together, but they got flew over here for MTV to do exposition. That's why I said, man, them cats can move, man. They,
Oh,
they
man.
were sharp. Yeah,
Man. All right. Well, I've got some things to go listen to, man. This has been so fun, Kojo. Man, thank you for coming on the show today. Thanks for hanging out. This is just really practical conversation to really start thinking about AI from a different perspective. So
man.
enjoy
Hopefully I
it,
didn't
my
ramble too
friend.
much.
Oh, yeah. Love it. All right, man. We'll talk to you the next time.
All right, thanks, Kevin. I appreciate you. And if you need anything, please feel free to reach out.
Love it. Man, there's a lot to think about after that conversation. If you're a business leader, here are 4 things you should do next. Study how AI models actually work, not just what they promise. Assemble an internal task force that includes every key department, especially HR. 3. Define specific use cases and policies before rolling out anything. And 4. Build a feedback loop with regular audits to evaluate if your AI investments are paying off or increasing risk. AI is powerful, but it doesn't replace human judgment. It should serve your goals, not shape them without scrutiny. If you got value out of this episode, drop us a comment, hit subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and just keep swimming with sharks.